All right. First, the most important fact I think that I've gleaned from all of this, I'm going to talk about a lot of things that Aiden went over in his stream last night. I watched the whole VOD, and I'm going to reiterate some of it to you and bring in stuff from some other places. But I think the most important thing, really, to keep in mind here, well, yeah, probably the most important fact is that Nintendo is a very big company and it is not set up to make decisions well. And that sounds kind of obvious, but I want to kind of break down what that kind of functionally looks like. So the thing about Nintendo, and this is not a hard and fast rule, it doesn't exactly work this way, but it's good enough for what we're going for, is there are 3 layers basically at the company. The first layer is, and the ground layer is the competitive ops team. I didn't know they had a competitive ops team before yesterday. I don't know what they do. I assume it's mainly work on Splatoon and Pokemon, but maybe they were also made because this Panda Nintendo circuit was in talks for years. Maybe this was made a few years back and this was how this whole thing started. But anyway, the competitive ops team are people that understand how the community feels. They understand why we don't want to work with Nintendo, and they understand and they want to try and make things right in a lot of ways. They're very clued in. They understand what's going on. So we have technically people on the inside at Nintendo, at least at the ground floor. The problem is everyone at a level, at whatever level, can get completely axed by the level above them. So when Aiden was interviewing for working with Nintendo, with the competitive ops team, he was repeatedly told, be prepared to work on something for 6 months and then a higher up just comes and chops it. And that is brutal, I think. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to run things that way, but Nintendo didn't ask me. I'm not on the ops team. And so they only have so much power, and they might be spending lots of time working on really good things, but it can just be hard to get it through. But anyway, those people understand. So then there's layer 2. And I think layer 2 is a confusing layer, but I think it's more of the Nintendo of America people. And I think they're not as informed. They don't really know why we don't want to work with them as much. I think some do, some don't know. It seems a little more confusing in that area, because I think, people are more focused on some executive things and things like that. So not everyone's like fully understanding what's going on there. I would assume the lower part of that knows and the higher part probably doesn't, but I don't really know. But anyway, so we start losing people there, but generally I think they're relatively cool with us. I don't think that's where we're losing a lot of stuff. What's getting us axed is the highest level, Nintendo of Japan. And Nintendo of Japan, very far removed, doesn't know what we want, doesn't have any way to really communicate with us outside of Alan, which was its own problem, and we're going to talk about Alan in a moment. But, it's just, so the people with all the decision-making power, we're not getting anything to them. I don't know how. I don't know why Nintendo of America people won't talk to them. There's a lot of things I don't know about that. I don't understand things still. I still have questions. But anyway, that's part of the issue. And then getting something, and so if you work on something for a competitive ops team 6 months, and then someone at Nintendo of America actually likes it, then that would take time and you have to work it over, and then sending that over and then getting that in front of an executive at Nintendo of Japan would take even longer. So it takes a long time to do things, and it's not easy to get things done. So that is, I think, the most important fact here that I really just want to kind of put out, and one of the best things I learned from this. And so I don't think that this, what's gone on was some carefully calculated scheme, because the company is just too separate. It's too disorganized. It doesn't know how to communicate with itself to come up with a scheme. I mean, maybe when they greenlit a circuit, they were like maybe that was part of it, and maybe like there was some decision somewhere about something like that, but who knows? I don't know why they greenlit it. But okay, the circuit got greenlit like late last year, and if you know a lot about running tournaments, and I don't, but this is my understanding, that, it's hard to now get a turnaround and create a circuit in like a few months. It's very difficult because it normally takes like a lot of extra time to plan, and they were just trying to get Nintendo to just be okay with it in the first place. And Nintendo said, okay, you can have the circuit, go do it. And so he could give a license to people, but he didn't have a lot of time. And so I don't know how much that factors into Alan's, the CEO of Panda, if you don't know, him going around to tournaments and saying, boy, it sure would be bad if your unlicensed event got slapped up. Know what I'm saying? But it didn't help. And a lot of TOs can't verify this because they're under NDAs. But, that's the impression a lot of TOs separately came to, that this was not something they wanted to work with. And, they had a circuit right there, Smash World Tour, so why not do that? And the terms that Alan was offering were not great, and so they had to make better terms to do that. So competition was cool. Glad we had another circuit. That was nice. So much for that. And so, but, I'm going to take a moment to say that I am not going to be particularly charitable to Alan. Because, and I know Aiden was, but I'm not going to be, and that is because, Alan did some I know Alan was at least involved in some not cool stuff that he did to Golden Guardians, which I'm not going to talk about because it's not really my place to talk about it, but, yeah, we've been mad at Alan, or kind of parts of Panda for a little bit, so yeah, don't think this, I'm not going to say this was just like he was time crunched and desperate and like he was just trying to save the community. I'm not, no. Alan did some bad stuff. All right. I'm not sure about all the details of the rest, but certainly, Alan did some not great stuff. And, all right. So moving on, Alan does finally get some better terms, and some people do go along with the circuit and everything like that. And Nintendo didn't even know that Alan was doing this. They were not aware. They were not aware that Alan was saying, "Hey, you better sign on to this license, or you're getting taken out. You're getting taken out. You're just not even gonna be able to run your tournament." No, they didn't know that. And actually, when Nintendo would be in talks with other TOs and they would say what Alan had said to them, Nintendo employees would feel exhausted. That was the word that kept coming back. So, again, it sounds like... Now, why Nintendo didn't talk to Alan at that point, I don't know. I don't know how they went a long time with people that talk to the TOs, and Alan talked to the TOs, and why didn't they talk? I don't know. There's a lot of things that still don't really make sense there. But anyway, that's kind of how it was going. And then things finally, I'm sure that, Alan was saying also to TOs, for those of you that don't know the full Smash World Tour story, Alan was also saying before the year started, the Smash World Tour is going to get canceled. You might as well sign with him, whatever. Obviously, it didn't happen. Smash World Tour, ran for most of this year. And a big part of that was probably because as we talked about, the hierarchy, the highest part that makes the decision at Nintendo, the Nintendo of Japan, didn't really know what was going on. And then when it finally got in front of them, they were like, oh yeah, no, we can't let that circuit exist. Get rid of it. And that's probably what happened. Again, we don't know for sure, but given the Nintendo's speed of decision making, that's probably why it's happening now and why the timing doesn't make sense, because the company structure doesn't make sense and their priorities conflict and, whatever. So it's a mess. And so that's why that's happening now, probably. Maybe there was some sort of timing aspect and they didn't want the finals to happen because that would be the worst part. I don't know. But it was probably just more the hierarchy thing. Let's talk about part of why this is rough. So I think we don't really know what the fallout is exactly going to be like here, but because Nintendo has a competitive ops team, or because Panda reached out to them and tried to make it work, or whatever, we now have Nintendo paying attention to us to an extent again. Again, like I said, a lot of parts of them don't really know what's going on, especially Japan, which is unfortunate. But there are questions like, are they going to try and force another circuit? Are they going to try and force every TO to be licensed? Are they not going to allow any more tournaments because they're like, well, we just don't want to deal with this? I don't think we really know. And the thing is, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, well, what if? Well, they could just take away the stream and then we still have the tournament. I think they can get rid of the whole thing. Like, if they can shut down the Smash World Tour, they're willing to shut down, I think, a lot of these bigger events, like, full stop. And if they shut down events, like if they were to shut down Genesis, which is coming up, I mean, the TOs can't really recoup the cost very well. I mean, it was hard enough for them to delay Genesis because of COVID that one time, if you remember. Financially, I mean, and logistically, but, you know. So that's tough, because we could live in a world where there are no more majors, and we would have to kind of get by with locals and small regionals, which would omega suck. I don't know if that's the world we're going to live in, but it is a possible world. I will say I talked to I've talked to an influential TO last night, and as of last night, they believe they still thought everything was going to be okay. I'm not allowed to talk about specifics, but they thought things were going to be okay. And again, what does that mean, right? Like, I can't say. I'm not supposed to talk about it, but there still seems to be, at least as of last night, it seems okay enough for now. There's no one, the TOs aren't necessarily freaking out, which is good, I think. Or maybe, Nintendo is figuring out what they're going to do, or they have to go up their chain of command again, and then we're going to get a hammer that's going to result from what's happening now, 6 months down the road, we'll see, right? Anyway, this all comes at a time when I didn't realize how important this time was, in a way, because, I mean, normally from like a player perspective, I have my own thoughts about what's going on, but it turns out that TOs were amassing a lot more influence and money and things like that. No, they're not. I'm not saying they're like omega rich or anything, but I think they were getting a lot of things going better for them these last couple years. In fact, these are probably the best 2 years to be at least a TO in the scene, at least a higher level TO. And this year that kind of culminated in the Papa John's deal. As it turned out, there were a lot of zeros on that deal. I didn't know. I just thought it was kind of nice. Nintendo was mad about that deal and almost stopped it from happening, partly because of the number of zeros and partly because they weren't involved. And so that seems like they're going to make it a lot harder to work maybe with Papa John's again for the next year, or with other sponsors, because they really want to have a tight control over things. Not great from how I can see it. And again, I think this is more of the Nintendo of Japan part of it. The IP, the branding, very focused. And, like, our history with Nintendo. I talked about this when the Panda circuit was first announced, and I said, I don't see this going well. I don't have a reason to see this going well. Turned out that ended up being the case. If another Nintendo circuit gets announced, I will feel the same way, unless there is public communication, unless they're saying, hey, there are things you want that we can allow you to have, or, there's some act of goodwill. I'd really like an apology. I don't expect them to give us one, but that would also go a long way, I think, because they've kind of screwed us over for a long time. But there is technically a world if Nintendo wants to go down this path. There is a world where, we could have like some elected or however representative to work with Nintendo and be a commissioner and work with the TOs and Nintendo and kind of be a go-between, and that would be really cool. And they could publicly connect with us, and then they could tell us what Nintendo wants, and then we can tell them what we want, and they can try and like figure that out, and that would be really good. But again, I don't have any indication that would happen right now. I mean, so far they've been much more interested in crushing competition and, you know, stopping events and stopping just circuits just in general. And now they want to do their own, but it seems like they're, you know, like they've blacklisted commentators and, you know, whatever, right? So that's a serious issue. And I was very, very distraught about this yesterday. Actually, in my health appointment, I spent 45 minutes being distraught about the Nintendo side of this because, you know, and we were talking about, you know, how much I still wanted Melee to grow and to thrive and for people to still have this place and for things to work better. And I hope that, because we don't know how this is going to pan out, but my hope is that, you know, we clear out, you know, Panda, which I think was an issue, or at least Alan, and then maybe that can open up something for us. And I don't know what that something is. But what I want to say to a lot of people, because I feel like in this situation, people, and I was this way yesterday, I was very hopeless and I felt very dejected and I was like, there's nothing we can do. They're now paying attention to us and they're just trying to screw us again. They will not leave us alone. And I was very, very dejected about it. And I think we need to remember that we still have things we can do. And whether to you that means, you know, building up a PR outrage to work against them with, or it means something like financially supporting Smash World Tour or the people involved with that, or it means supporting Melee players and content creators and people talking about this on Twitter or whatever, right? Like, or going to your locals, or going to whatever tournaments that we're going to have. I think there are a lot of ways to do things still. Or trying to get in touch with someone somewhere at Nintendo and talking about this and seeing if there can be a solution or letting them know how we feel. Because maybe there are people there that don't understand, like I said. And so I think there are things we can do. And I think one of the most important things, and I think this is one of the things that Scar talked a lot about, is if we just keep playing Melee. If we just believe that things are going to be okay, because they always have been, that they're going to be all right. We don't have to know the answer. We didn't know when Brawl came out and Melee died that that things were going to be better years later. We were like, that's it. Game's dead. And then we built it back, and then it became a big thing. And then we pushed Nintendo back. Granted, a lot of unusual circumstances around that, and it was a charity event, not really a whole lot they could do. I think they've learned from that and are getting smarter about how they, you know, talk to the public, based on the Kotaku article. Anyway, we still, whether that can work or not is one thing, but we still have things we can do. We still have other ways around. If we really wanted to, we could, you know, allegedly, the source code will be made available eventually, and we could build our own Melee-like, with, you know, IP that's free of them if it comes to that. But there are other solutions for monetization. There are other things that we can try and do. Circuit probably off the table, at least for a while at this point. But there are things that we can do. And again, something everyone can do is support Melee and support, you know, people that play Melee or just play Melee, right? Because I think as long as we're enjoying the game and we're thinking about how sick it is, like, they can't physically take it away from us. Like, there's too many of us and the company's way too slow. Again, the 3 levels, the Nintendo of Japan is the one that wants to whack everything, and it takes them like 6 to 12 months to do any of that. They can't stop that. They can't stop us from loving Melee and doing stuff with Melee. they might be able, they can stop our really big events because those take a long time to do. They can see it coming and they can stop it. Okay. But small, like locals, locals can just pop up and disappear and whatever. Even small regionals can probably get away with that to an extent, maybe. And so we can still figure it out. You know, home streams are still going to be here. Content, we can still make that. So Melee, this is still very survivable for us, and it might be a setback of some kind, but we don't know what's coming out of it. Then we could look back in this in 5 years and say, okay, this happened, but then, you know, a few months later we had a great growth period, right? We don't know what's coming from this. And so I do encourage people to embrace the positive side of we don't know and embrace what we can do. For my part, this is talking about this, right? I think this is something that, you know, hasn't been explicitly said. Like, people are like, oh, just play Melee, and other people criticize that. But I think if we think about what we can control, if we think about what we can contribute to, if we think about how we still have such great strength in numbers, and how there are people at Nintendo who understand us, and how we built up so much, and how there is so much going for the scene, and how we do have more of an infrastructure, and we are partnered with Beyond the Summit, who has a marketing team that can maybe get stuff for us. Like, there are still things that we have that we can use and do more for ourselves. So yes, did Alan do a lot of bad stuff? Yeah, and maybe other people at Panda don't really know the full story. And would it be good for them to be punished? I think so. And do I trust Nintendo circuits with NDAs and a bunch of secrecy? No, I don't. But there are paths forward for us, and today that can start with, again, taking control of what we can control, supporting streams, talking about Melee, playing Melee, feeling like we can get things done, or having pushback against Nintendo or Panda or whatever. And I think it's totally valid. I think that's fine, and I don't think you're crazy for doing it. I think some people are going to be cynical about it. I think some people are going to be dejected, and I think that's fine. But at the end of the day, we can only control what we do. And the more we act as a group, the more that we try to, you know, like, imagine that we took more of an active role in, like, having top players come together more to create a lot of content. Like, imagine if you have Mango and Leffen playing Among Us VR and creating, like, clippable moments that go outside of the Smash sphere that bring people in, right? Or whatever it is. Like, you know, how Mango had like clips on his stream, like playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and a lot of people found out about him from that because he got Exodia at that one time or whatever. Like, there are a lot of things that we could do to grow the game, if we just start thinking about it differently. And I think we might have to start thinking differently if we're going to grow the game, and not just say, okay, well, let's just play and go to big tournaments and hope the TOs make these business deals. That might not be enough anymore, but that's okay. We have to reorganize and rethink our strategy. And I would love to have a collaboration with people trying to figure out what to do to move forward, because I think right now there's a lot of, we don't know, we're not sure, and that's great, but there's a lot of feeling around this, and I would love to talk about solutions. So that's what I would like to offer in this discussion, and I would appreciate you at least considering the perspective. Okay, so that's my talk. So hopefully that made some sense.